5 steps to install an aftermarket EFI system. I personally have got the Holley Sniper EFI, but I wanted to break down into kind of 5 general steps that you could use for anybody doing an EFI swap on one of these older cars, because they're all sort of more or less the same when you break it down to the essentials. Before you even get started, first thing I would do is read over your instructions thoroughly and understand what it is that you're doing for your specific kit. Now, I've read the instructions and I've watched their videos online of how to do this particular install. So step 1 is going to be the easiest step in my opinion, and that is to get rid of your old carb or whatever you have sitting on top of your engine, maybe nothing, and install the new EFI throttle body. With all the aftermarket fuel injection systems out there, I ended up going with the Holley Sniper EFI kit. Okay, so step 2 is probably one of the more complicated steps, is to set up your fuel tank. I'll show you what I'm doing for my 69 Mustang and the sort of fuel pump setup I got. I'm just going to show you how I did it for mine. It's going to be different for everybody because everybody has a different car or is using a different setup. There's a lot of different fuel pump setups you can use for these type of kits. So let me show you what I did on mine. So for running the fuel lines for the fuel injection, obviously this will be the feed line, and then I'm going to go ahead and use this as the return line. 6 AN to 1/4 NPT, 90-degree fitting. Goes in where the drain normally goes on the fuel tank for these Mustangs. So if you're trying to tap into the drain for your return, it is a 1/4 NPT, and then you just have to adapt it to whatever you're using. But you got to use sealant on the NPT threads. That's what I got this for. I just want a good seal. I don't want it going into my fuel system. Step 3 is to install the fuel pump. It goes along with prepping your fuel tank, but every setup is different, so you got to figure out how to mount your fuel pump. I'm going to show you how I did mine right here. And like I said, this is going to differ but depending on what kind of setup you're going with. I'm particularly going with an inline fuel pump on this, and I got to get it mounted up to the car in an acceptable way so that we can get fuel to the throttle body here. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I gotta get this fuel pump mounted up back there on the tank, but there's not a way to do that, so I'm going to be making a bracket for the fuel pump. It's going to go on there. I got to cut it out. This is going to be recycling this piece of metal to make my fuel pump bracket, but as you can see, it's pretty bashed up, so it's not going to bolt up back onto the car anyway, so I got to buy a new one of these anyway, so it's no big loss. Not too bad. Bracket I just made. Alright, I'm going to tighten these fittings with a wrench, obviously, but I wanted to show you guys something that I marked out. This end has the in, so that I'll know when I go to install it up that that's, you know, the inside, because there's a little arrow that shows you how it flows, but that's covered up by this. That's covered up by this rubber, so I can't see that, so I just wanted to mark it so I don't get confused. Step number 4 is to run your fuel lines from your throttle body to your fuel tank, and also to do all the miscellaneous wiring that you need to do for the kit. So I'm doing the wiring, and I want to say this particular kit was supposed to only have really like 3 wires, but it's more like 5 to 6 because there's the 2 battery wires, which is super easy. Anybody can figure that out. You got your switched ignition wire, which in my case was the trickiest because there's not a provision in the fuse block for that. And then you gotta do the wire to the ignition coil for the signal. And the last wires that you might not think about is the 2 wires that go to the fuel pump. And no matter what system you go with, you're gonna have to have those wires because you're gonna need a fuel pump to run your fuel injection system.
I'm running the fuel line and the wiring back to the fuel tank.
Okay, I want to show you guys what I'm doing with the fuel pump ground for the fuel pump wiring. So here it is. I have it bolted inside the car where it's going to be bolted to the bolted to the chassis. And now I'm going to make sure it's good connection by checking it with the ohm meter here, and it is 0.2 ohms, which is exactly what you want from the negative battery to where it's going to go on the body of the car. Now I can also go into voltage check that by switching my ohm meter or my multimeter over to volts DC or VDC as it says on the little screen. Plug my one end into the positive of the battery and then test the lead here, and I get 12.5 volts. So that's going to work just perfectly fine. So now I'm going to go ahead and get that all installed. And I need to clean up the installation a bit, but I got to get some different fittings, some different bends, so I don't have to have the hose, wrapped around like that. So I can just do more straight hose than all this bendy crap. But that's what it looks like right now for initial startup. And step 5, which is fairly straightforward, is to install the O2 sensor into the exhaust, or you may call it an air-fuel ratio sensor. Either way, they look the same. They do a little bit different things, but it doesn't really matter. O2 sensor, air-fuel ratio sensor, whatever you want to call it, you got to get that installed. I'm going to go ahead here and install the O2 sensor. So that was step 5. Now, those are all steps done, but obviously there's the part of setting up the computer and then starting the car. Also, as a side note for myself, I need to remember to put oil in the engine before I start it. That's my install for the Holley Sniper EFI on my 69 Mustang. If you've installed EFI on your car, let me know how it went for you. Also, check out the next video. We'll actually drive the 69 Mustang. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to see more videos on the 69 Mustang, and I will see you guys next time.
Sorry about the airplane, but I'm going to try to keep talking anyways. Actually, I'm not. Just 1 minute. Alright, sorry about that. But